Hello and welcome to the city of Stuttgart. For several weeks I wanted to make a video like this one. As you saw in the title, now we will take a little trip back in time to learn about certain historical data that I found interesting. Important to know a little more about the region of southern Germany. My intention is not to bore you with a lot of information that is difficult to understand. As you can imagine, all of Europe has too much history, and for centuries countless events have happened and countless people have passed through. It is very difficult not to get lost with data and dates. So in this video, we will only superficially review certain information exclusively for general culture and above all to understand a little more about the why of many things in this area and especially in the city of Stuttgart in the state of Baden-Württemberg. So if you are interested in learning about this region of Germany, whether as a tourist or you live or plan to live, this video will help you to locate yourself and make it easier for you to understand many things about why this city has developed in different aspects. To know why this city is the way it is. Before starting, a brief invitation to subscribe to this channel. If you are interested in Germany, you plan to visit, work, study in this region, we upload informative videos almost every week. And without further ado, we begin. We started in the 1st century after Christ. We are in the middle of the Roman Empire. The region of Germany was divided into different regions. The Saxons in the north, for example, but in the south there was what is Bavaria and Swabia. And well, the region of Swabia is where the state of Baden-Württemberg is currently located. But this region of the city of Stuttgart, above all, was the part of the state of Wurttemberg up to Lake Constance in northern Switzerland, and a part to the west of what is now Bavaria. During the first centuries this region was duchies. They were states, even kingdoms, but we will talk about this a little later. And in the same way, for years during the Middle Ages, in the same style of Game of Thrones there were battles between powerful families, wars in dispute of territory and authority, political marriages negotiated with powerful families of these regions, battles in which even entire families were annihilated to control power. There were different houses that disappeared and others that still exist. Names like the Stauffenberg, Hohenzollern, Wurttemberg, names and families that still exist, their castles and even their heirs. It is for this reason that this region of Germany throughout its history has been of small towns around medieval castles and not precisely of large urban cities. That is why, generally, you find many palaces next to small and medium-sized areas or towns that once were agricultural areas of peasants who paid tribute to the noble or feudal families who built their country palaces around the region. But something very important is that today this region is still considered as the Old Swabia. People consider themselves as Swabians and even still maintain their own dialect that is also called Swabian or Schwaben in German. The city of Stuttgart is currently very multicultural, but in its surroundings, when you travel much further south, you find that the Old Wise dialect is still the one that everyone speaks in their homes, and clarify that it is not an accent in German. It is a dialect that has differences in grammar with the German language. For example, with northern Germany, they have a hard time understanding and sometimes it is even a reason for mockery for being an accent considered as peasant. But in the regions of Austria and Switzerland it is a very similar dialect. So if you have learned to speak German, you will also find it difficult to understand the dialect of this region, especially when an old lady is on the street and wants to try to communicate with you. So if you feel bad for not understanding, don't worry, even Germans don't understand each other. Now we go back to the 10th century AD, in the middle of the Holy Roman Empire, during the period of the emperor, not very popular, with the Italians for being of Germanic origin, specifically from Saxony, Emperor Otto the Great. Was a time of constant struggles to expand the empire. Otto was at war with the Hungarians, who were known for having within their army one of the strongest stables of that time. And it was for this reason that he gave the mission to one of his sons, Ludolfo, who became Duke of Swabia, to find a place to establish a farm with the aim of breeding horses and being able to establish his own stables to strengthen the army of the empire. It was when he found himself in what is now the city of Stuttgart, the perfect place for this. The small valley and the mountains that surround it, plus a small river that flowed down supplying water to the area, until closing the area reaching the Neckar River, naturally formed the right conditions for the mission entrusted. So Ludolfo laid the first stones of what is now the city of Stuttgart. It is said that starting with the old castle as a farmhouse, in what is now located the Schiller Square, its church, cellars and its old stables. That is why the name of the city of Stuttgart comes from the word Stuttengarten, which means the garden of the mares. Since then the entire valley was characterized by being the habitat for horses, which until today are part of the identity. And even the shield of the city is currently a horse. And by the way, the same horse is used by one of the most representative brands of the city, the Porsche car brand. Now we go back to the 19th century, during the years 1806 to 1918. For more than 100 years, the state of Wurttemberg became a duchy, to become a kingdom, in which 4 different kings paraded, logically all the successors of the Wurttemberg family. During this time many events very typical of politics took place: fights, betrayals, social struggles, corruption, political marriages, despotic rulers, but also good deeds and development. During the duchy, before the proclamation of the kingdom, in the late 1700s, characters such as Duke Karls of Wurttemberg had led the state to bankruptcy, with constructions of exuberant capricious palaces such as the Hohenheim Palace, the Solitude Palace, and even the new castle that could never be finished due to lack of funds. It is said that he used and deceived the French nobility by wasting funds that he kept during the war, and his successors supported Napoleon's side on the other hand, even militarily. And that is why, at the end of Napoleon's wars in France, it was Napoleon himself who, out of gratitude for the help, was precisely the one who proclaimed the Duchy of Wurttemberg as a kingdom during an official visit to the city of Stuttgart. And despite the fact that they did not have the best political relations, since it was known that the Dukes of Wurttemberg were more businessmen than violent, the first King Frederick of Wurttemberg received Napoleon in the city. So he was the one who finally finished the construction of the new palace after almost 60 years. This was finished exclusively to receive Napoleon. It is said that King Frederick I was a bit of an egocentric person, sick with power like his predecessors. But the successor, King Wilhelm I, stands out as one of the most important characters in history, a total change in politics. Married to Queen Catherine Pavlovna of Russia, who were cousins, but she came from St. Petersburg in Russia. The queen because she came to the much richer city with much greater social development, greatly influenced the king to change the way of governing and bring much more development to the city. Unfortunately, Queen Catherine died very young and only lasted as queen for the first 3 years. And King Wilhelm I ruled for more than 50 years, and his legacy is invaluable to date. When the queen died, the king built a sepulchral chapel for her, where the king himself was buried, even though he later married another woman, but King Wilhelm asked to be buried with his beloved Queen Catherine. Now this chapel is a tourist attraction in the city, and its history is a great love story. There is much to say about these 2 characters, but perhaps we will do that in a video exclusively for that. Finally, the 4th and last king was Wilhelm II, who had to flee the city during the revolutions and social struggles of the beginning of the last century. It is said that people were not really against him, but that the abolition of monarchies was a trend throughout Germany and Europe. It is said that they had to bring in protesters from other regions of Germany in order to recreate a revolution within the city. But finally the king simply resigned his post and fled through the back door of his residence, which is currently the State Palace, right in the center of the city, thus ending the period of the reign of Wurttemberg. Now we go back to the years 2870. Still in the time of the reign, exclusively to the city of Bad Cannstatt on the other side of the Neckar River to the northwest of Stuttgart. Now a district of the Stuttgart metropolitan area. The new way of governing was bearing fruit and social development was increasing. It was then that one of the most important characters of humanity arises with one of the inventions that revolutionized the whole world. We are talking about Gottlieb Daimler, engineer and designer. After several years working, finally establishes his workshop in Bad Cannstatt, next to his house, to create the first compact gasoline internal combustion engine, which gave way to the founding of the Daimler Motors Company, which years later together with Carl-Benz, another engineer from the same region but from the city of Mannheim north of Baden-Württemberg, created the first automobiles and the Mercedes-Benz brands. The creation of both the engine and the automobiles in the midst of the Industrial Revolution boosted the region and the city of Stuttgart until today, adding also the creation of the Porsche brand and the Bosch company, of two other important people in the city like Robert Bosch, have made the perfect combination so that since then the importance and relevance of the city of Stuttgart is worldwide. Companies that absorb engineers from all parts of the world. In addition to being connected with local universities producing complete generations of engineers specialized in automotive mechanics. Finally, another historical event or period that marked the city is undoubtedly the Second World War. The city was destroyed by 85%. Practically the aerial bombings destroyed all the emblematic buildings, only leaving the highest towers, solely for the purpose of being able to locate themselves under the rubble. At the end of the war, in the reconstruction stage, many new decisions had to be made. The city and its population have always been characterized by having innovation within their pride and culture. In fact, the city of Stuttgart is one of the cities that throughout history has presented more investment patents worldwide. You can imagine how many inventions have been developed by its brands Daimler Motors, Mercedes-Benz and Porsche or Bosch. And well, being one of the characteristics of its people the desire to move forward, at the time of the reconstruction of the city, it had to be decided how to rebuild the infrastructure, and, in the decade of the 1950s, the desire for renovation and modernity was stronger than the desire to preserve the classic or old. And that is why there are a few buildings that were decided to be rebuilt with the original or old designs. And the great majority were built under contemporary local designs of that time. That is why even the City Hall has today a very different design than the old one in general. Much has been renovated with architectural designs contemporary from the 1950s to the present, or also some that were not completely destroyed, with designs influenced by the architecture of the 1920s. Knowing this, you will be able to appreciate the architecture of the city with a little more context. Today, many like to see the old buildings, but at the time of reconstruction, at that precise moment, it was not the trend to take. I hope I have not bored some of you, but I know that for many others, you find this information quite interesting. It will undoubtedly help you see the city with different eyes and understand a little more about the current reality. How the city has developed and what its current lifestyle is like. If you like the information and you are interested in this region or city, or in Germany in general, whether to visit, live or study, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. We have many videos expanding much more on the different aspects of the city, tourist places and much more. You can also follow me on social networks and visit our blog travelstuttgart.com, where we also expand a lot of history like this. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end, and we will bring you more information in the coming days. Thank you very much once again and see you next time.